Hey everybody, Blake T. Wild here, and welcome back to the Ultimate Era. We have seen the comings and goings, the creations of so many superheroes and teams. We have witnessed the rise and fall and rise and death of Peter Parker Spider-Man. We've witnessed the creation and embodiment of a brand new Spider-Man in Miles Morales. But now we are about to witness what I have come to discover is the motto of the Ultimate Universe, which is sometimes things just fall apart. Released in 2012, written by Brian Wood, Sam Humphries, and Brian Michael Bendis, with art by Paco Medina, Riley Brown, Billy Tan, Timothy Green II, David Marquez, Luke Ross, Carlo Barberi, Pepe Larraz, and Agustin Padilla. This is Divided We Fall, United We Stand. Get ready because this is probably going to be a long one. And that's why this video is brought to you by my Patreon and Etsy. Patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos and Etsy.com/BlakeTWild. But there are also a few important things to note that I don't know if anybody will bring it up in the comments, but hey, you might if you've actually read this event. I am skipping slightly ahead with my overall coverage of the original Ultimate Marvel Universe. You should know that at this time, the Maker has finally made himself known to the world. He's launched an attack on both New Asgard by sending his Children of Tomorrow upon the resurrected Asgardians. He kills and destroys all of them. Then he bombs Washington, D.C. via an antimatter bomb, which destroys the president, the cabinet, all of Congress, and only the Secretary of Energy is the person left alive in the chain to become president. So he's in charge now, meaning that in an entirely fictional and shocking manner, the United States of America has fallen apart, driven by rapid and extreme anti-mutant rhetoric and the crumbling of the central government. Texas has become an independent, nuclear-powered nation, with Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma, and New Mexico all abandoned by the government because of the Nimrod Sentinels and the anti-mutant regimes taking place in the American Southwest. It has fallen apart utterly, but hey, we have this fine and dandy little map that shows us the ruined United States of America that gets updated every few issues. The book begins with the new X-Men. Iceman, Human Torch, Rogue, Jimmy Hudson, Wolverine's hot blonde son, and Kitty Pryde, deep within the Morlock tunnels beneath New York, where they watch a news broadcast of President Howard's national address regarding the Sentinel attack in the Southwest. And the country having no choice but to cede power to the southwestern states, to the Sentinels, and advise those still trapped to shelter themselves. And martial law has been enacted with the entire United States of America. Sometime later, Kitty suits up as the Shroud and heads into the city. Many thoughts cross her mind as she intangibly flies. William Stryker Jr., the man whose consciousness was uploaded into the government-sanctioned Nimrod system, mutant concentration camps in the Southwest, the government hunting down those still free or on the run, and the fact that she refuses to show mercy to her enemies. She disrobes and reveals her new suit and watches as pro-mutant protests erupt through New York. The U.S. government tramples its own citizens, and she witnesses the military use live rounds on their fellow Americans. And she appears a second later and destroys the leader's rifle and takes cover as soldiers open fire on her. Kitty waits until the protesters are out of the line of fire and then phases her way into the crowd of rampaging jackboots and shows them no mercy. Later that night, she speaks with the new X-Men and tells them that she's leaving New York and going to the Southwest to fight the Sentinels. She wants them to come with her. Jimmy reminds her that their previous battle against the new Sentinels did not go well, and now they have hundreds of thousands of the damned things out there. She tells him what she saw on the surface, that humans are still standing up against the government in support of mutants and freedom, and that it's probably happening all over the country. Rogue tells her that they should just stay safe down here, but Kitty asks how long they'll be able to hide in this hole. Then she tells them it's time that mutants stop being the victims and be their own protection, just like Professor X taught them. And everyone agrees except for Johnny Storm. He doesn't want to go. He also doesn't want to leave the others that they have down here, especially since most of them are kids. He wants to stay and keep them safe. And Kitty's okay with that and orders the others to start packing up and get ready for travel. Into the night, they make their way to the Port Authority bus terminal and set off. Jimmy gives Kitty's hand a squeeze for good luck, and she tells him that they have something better. X-Men armbands? Kitty whispers that they'll wear them once they arrive, and keep wearing them every single day until every mutant is freed. The bus eventually arrives at a military checkpoint. The mutants wait anxiously, but it is then waved out onto the freeway. At the temporary office of the President Howard, 311 feet below sea level, S.H.I.E.L.D. operatives work around the base as he is informed that Phoenix, Oklahoma, Las Vegas, and Albuquerque are being razed by Sentinel forces. And according to their satellite intel, any survivors fleeing the area into surrounding zones are being hunted down and killed by anti-mutant militias. Howard asks the current director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Marvin Flum, to get the Ultimates out of their detention center that S.H.I.E.L.D. has locked them away in. Flum remarks that they're Fury's people and they can't be trusted. But Howard tells him that they don't have a choice, and it's his job to control them as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Then he welcomes his old college roommate and new chief of staff, Carol Danvers, to the team. Then they look up at the fuzzy television set and see a broadcast of Captain America in the former state of New Mexico. Captain America, before this, pretty much went full nomad. For quite a while. He went off the grid, nobody knew where he was, he's been gone for quite some time. Cut to the battleground of New Mexico. Captain America demolishes anti-mutant militias and stops them from murdering innocent civilians and journalists as these right-wing maniacs finally have an outlet to express their vitriolic hate and lust for harm. Meanwhile, in Stark Tower, New York, Stark International is focused on the collapsing economy that's currently in a free fall. But Tony is too focused on his brain tumor. Then all the news stations change to the footage of Captain America fighting the anti-mutant militias, and Tony orders Jarvis to call the armor lab immediately. And this Jarvis isn't actually named Jarvis, it's just what Tony calls him. His real name's Will. The two then head out of the room as Tony tells Jarvis that he wants a launch in 5 minutes and for all of his meetings to be canceled. And 5 minutes later, Iron Man blasts off in his new NR Phantom 9D mag armor, which he can use in unison with his sentient brain tumor named Anthony. While in the ruins of New Asgard off the coast of Europe, Thor works to reconstruct the statue of his father, begging him for guidance as Midgard burns. The Asgardians all gone. And then his phone rings to rock me like a hurricane. The ringtone he set for Tony. Tony gives him the rundown to get to New Mexico ASAP, because they're back in action. Meanwhile, in New Mexico, Cap demands to know where the leader of this fascistic band of marauders is. And a nearby journalist cries out to Cap as a Nimrod sentinel hovers down behind him. It opens fire as the militia control it, and Cap shields himself as they all chant to burn the flag. Cap dives out of the way as it blasts and tackles the machine. He slams and prepares for another attack when it's shot by Iron Man. And Tony makes quick work of it as the racist gunmen retreat. Cap orders Tony to stop them, but Thor's way ahead of him. The ringleader's ripped out of the truck by Steve, and his face is broken apart as Steve Rogers welcomes him back to the United States of America. With these wannabe jackboots subdued, Tony asks Steve where the hell he's been, because he disappeared after the funeral for Peter Parker. Steve simply says that he was away, and asks what the hell happened to his country. Tony then gets a call from Carol Danvers. She tells them that they need to get back to New York and the new Triskelion because Texas is threatening to launch a nuclear warhead into America. Which is just not a good idea. You are so fucking close to wherever you're gonna launch it at that no matter where you send it, you're gonna get affected. Anyway, as the sun rises in Dallas, the capital of the new Republic of Texas, a mysterious figure known only as Mr. Morez meets with the heads of the new Republic and tells them that if they listen to his every word, Texas will survive. Several hours later, the trio return to the new Triskelion, and Captain America learns that there is a new Spider-Man. Tony reveals he's about 13 or 14, but he's trying really hard. Steve can't believe that Fury allowed this, and Tony kind of reveals that Fury is back out of the picture after the president was atomized, and now it's this guy named Flum. Cap asks if they learned nothing from Peter Parker, and Tony tells him that they can't arrest someone for trying to be a good person. Steve simply says he does not like this idea. Tony says he should stop blaming himself for Parker, but Steve refuses to. Peter took that bullet for Steve, and Steve never got to train Peter like he was supposed to. And he is angry at himself for not listening to Tony and Fury and the others earlier and trying to help the kid sooner. And maybe if he had done that, Peter wouldn't have made those mistakes that led to his death. Tony suggests that he amend the mistakes he made with the first Spider-Man and go meet the new kid. Then a massive report from CNN appears on the screen with the title, Spider-Man Murderer? And at his home in Brooklyn, Miles lies in his bed in a shocked state. His father, Jeff, comes in and tells Miles that he has some bad news. He sits down at the foot of the bed and tells his son that his uncle Aaron is dead. And Miles flashes back to the horrible moment when, after Aaron the Prowler tried to kill Miles, his gauntlets misfired and he blew himself up. Jeff begins to cry and tells him that he's sorry because, whether he liked it or not, Aaron meant something to Miles. And Miles flashes back once again to his uncle telling him that he'll wind up just like him right before he died. Jeff continues going through the stages of grief, then drops the bomb that Spider-Man killed his uncle. That's what the police and news are saying anyway. Miles piles into his bed and asks if he can just be alone. Aaron's image flashes before him as he sobs into his blankets. The next day, Genki and Miles walk to school past military guards. They pass a newsstand with the Daily Bugle papers plastered everywhere, and Genki points out that after everything that's happened within the past year, this is what they run? Then Genki tells him that he knows that Miles didn't do it, and the two continue. Later at Vision's Academy, the two have lunch, and Genki tries to get Miles to stop feeling so guilty about what happened. Miles tells him he doesn't even know what happened. It was just all so fast. And then Miles gets a phone call. He hears the voice. Then the person on the other line tells him to meet somewhere and to get ready to write down the address. Miles jots it down on his hand, and then after school he sneaks out of Visions and into the city, where he is stopped by a soldier who tells him the street is closed and to turn back, or he will be detained. Miles walks away and slinks into an alley where he suits up and races across the city to the meeting place until he's distracted by a jewelry store robbery committed by Batroc Zelliper, one of my favorite Marvel villains. Miles takes down his henchman, but Batroc puts up quite the fight. Spider-Man gets his spider ass kicked as they battle up and down the street, and Batroc's crew steals a cop car, but then Spidey leaps out and hoists it and lobs it across the road. The police demand that he put his hands up and remain silent and take off the mask and don't move. They prepare to arrest him for murder when Spidey goes invisible and disappears. And Miles goes quite a ways away because by the time he arrives at the warehouse meeting in Jersey, it's sunset. He walks inside and apologizes for taking so long because he ran into some weird French villain robbing a jewelry store, and then asks why May Parker and Gwen Stacy wanted to see him. They officially introduce each other. Gwen recognizes Miles from the funeral, and May reveals the box in her hands. Something of Peter's that she thought was right for Miles, the new Spider-Man, to have. But before he can, Captain America steps out of the dark and tells her to hold off on that. Gwen and May wonder what the hell he's doing here and what his deal is, especially after he told them that he could have stopped Peter from ever getting involved in that fateful night. Miles, however, is shocked at how Cap even found them. Cap tells him that they intercepted their call and easily followed Miles through the city, noting that if he could, so could his enemies. And Miles didn't even realize it, which is one of the reasons why he doesn't want him to be Spider-Man. Miles says that Nick Fury said he could be, and Steve comes back that Miles is just too young. But Miles argues back that he is almost 14, barely younger than Peter when he became Spider-Man. Cap tells him he's not making the argument he thinks he is. And then Mary Jane Watson emerges from the shadows and realizes that Steve isn't arguing against Miles being Spider-Man. He's still talking to Peter because he wasn't there for him when he was supposed to be. And he couldn't save Peter after Peter saved him. Now he's just taking it out on Miles. Gwen reveals that she called MJ and told her what they were doing. Then Miles asks that they at least show Cap some respect. Gwen points out the first and only thing Captain America ever said to her was that Peter's death was his fault. Cap quietly tells them that he has learned quite a lot since he was unfrozen all those years ago, but the one thing that he has kept with him since the 40s is that you need to learn from your mistakes. And MJ awkwardly introduces herself to Miles, and he tells her that he's a fan of her blog. Cap interjects and tells him that he knows Miles' heart is in the right place because he saw it in Peter, and he saw it in himself when he once looked in a mirror at the scrawny, handicapped Steve Rogers in 1942. Miles cannot do this, especially not when the world is in such disrepair that it is now. Maybe when he's older. And Miles shouts and asks if Cap thinks that he killed the Prowler. Steve tells him he doesn't know what happened. Then he gets contacted by S.H.I.E.L.D. about an issue in the Lincoln Tunnel and informs them that he's being called away. But this is not the last of his conversation. And he heads out and speeds away on his motorcycle. Is this giving anyone else flashbacks? Because I bet it is for Steve. With Cap gone, Miles says that he doesn't know what to do, because this past year or so, he's been trying to ask himself, what would Peter Parker do? But he doesn't know what Peter Parker would do. He never met the guy. May walks over and says that Peter would say for Miles to prove himself and prove Cap wrong. Then May hands him the case, and Miles opens it up to find Spider-Man's original web shooters. May says that Peter would want Miles to have them. MJ watches in worry that maybe Cap is right. Maybe Miles is too young. But May takes him by the shoulders and tells Miles to not do what Cap says or what they say. Don't do what Peter would do. Do what Miles Morales will do. And Miles climbs atop the warehouse, secures the web shooters around his wrists, and launches a test shot and takes a swing, flails through the air, slams into a building. Then he climbs his way back up to another roof and tries again. And this time, he does it a bit better. And he slams into another roof. So he launches another and takes a leap of faith and finally soars over the city as the sun sets. Then an explosion rocks the Lincoln Tunnel. Spidey swings down and discovers the Rhino again. Oh, this fucking guy. Miles is nearly impaled by the Rhino and launched away as Captain America gets to his feet and prepares to keep fighting. Then Spider-Man returns and webs himself atop the Rhino, quipping and cracking jokes, just like Peter. Spider-Man webs Rhino's eye sensors, and then Miles flashes back to that fateful moment in time when he Venom struck the Prowler and the suit malfunctioned. And Spider-Man plants his hand at the base of the mechanical neck and zaps him. And the Rhino's entire form is enveloped by electrical energy, and a blasting pulse of power erupts. And the Rhino falls haplessly to the ground. Cap and Spidey sit beside one another, and Cap tells him he really needs some proper training, because that was messy. Miles asks if he'll be the one to do it. A few hours later, Captain America meets with Carol Danvers regarding the Texas situation. She explains that their intelligence reports that most are opposed to the succession, and that the movement is primarily being led by high-profile business leaders entrenched throughout Dallas and protected by stolen S.H.I.E.L.D. tech. She informs Steve that the president wants to invade, but most of the military is tied up with securing the U.S. states that they haven't lost yet, and Texas promised to launch a nuke if forces stepped foot past the border. Then she tells him that they'll only have 15 minutes to find their ringleaders and secure the nuclear disarm codes. Steve takes a heavy breath, analyzes the information across the screen, and tells her that they can do it in 14. Into the night, news stations broadcast reports from around the country. The southwestern states continue to crumble. In Sacramento, Silicon Valley entrepreneurs turned politicians claim to have established a united government called the West Coast Nation, rejecting calls to open borders to refugees and assist in humanitarian aid. And the new Republic of Texas is threatening grave and immediate action in the Southwest to keep the Sentinels and anti-mutant militias at bay, while leadership in the government continues to remain more or less quiet since the announcement regarding the succession of the southwestern states. Then it cuts to a live feed from Dallas as a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier appears over the city, followed by massive strikes of lightning. The mysterious Merez receives a call from the leader of the Texas Congress, Paul, about what is happening. Merez tells Paul that he's preparing for a future that he cannot even comprehend, and asks if he is at all aware that they have been attacked by the U.S. Paul cries out that they're evacuating the capital, and Merez tells him to use all of that muscle he bought to hold Dallas, and that it's time to launch the missile. As the Ultimates invade the new Texas Republic, a rocket is fired 50 miles outside of Houston. With 13 minutes now remaining, Cap and the Ultimates fight through Dallas. Tony soars through the sky, asking if they can please disable the anti-aircraft cannon, and Monica Chang, the new Black Widow, tells him that she's on her way. Then Thor slams down on the entrenched heavy armor as Hawkeye scouts for the chief executives, and Iron Man is attacked by a War Machine brigade. Monica finds her way to codename Dirty Harry as Danvers reports in. 11 minutes remaining. and their radar is picking up a nuclear missile heading for the East Coast. Monica takes out the AA crew and commandeers the cannon to take down the war machines as Thor moves in. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., 5 miles from Ground Zero, Perez meets with Senator Underwood of the Senate Emergency Committee to use his powers to make sure the president backs off of Merez's planned militia uprising in Wyoming. Merez smiles and tells him just for a week or two until they can get situated, and Underwood scoffs and asks why he would ever do that to his country. Merez tells him that they've struck a deal with the West Coast nation to provide coal, and a fledgling nation, given this chance to thrive, could be very generous in gratitude. Underwood tells him to fuck off, and then Merez brings up a pesticide factory that leaked in Idaho some time ago, leaving over 50 people dead, the company escaping entirely from prosecution, and a pretty penny ending up in Underwood's pocket. With 5 minutes remaining, Hawkeye finally tracks down the Billionaires Club in Fort Worth and begins clearing a room of hostiles as Cap calls in Thor for an airlift, and Tony keeps the War Machine Brigade busy. Tony activates his armor and begins frying the suits, calling them a stupid idea he had 5 years ago and nothing more. Then Tony speaks with Anthony, you know, his sentient brain tumor, and Anthony wants to suit up, but Tony tells him to stay plugged into the network because as soon as the codes are found, they need to hack into the systems and disable that nuclear warhead. Danvers reports that the missile is now over West Virginia as Cap, Thor, and Black Widow land in Burnett Plaza. Cap places everyone under arrest and demands the disarm codes, and then Thor spots all of the Norse gold in their greedy hands. Thor grabs the dude and chastises his mortal greed and corruption and launches him out of the fucking window, where he's caught by Iron Man and soars just high enough into the stratosphere where the guy can still breathe, enough so to tell him the code. Fraternity of Raptors. God, these guys are such sad little dorks. Anthony then takes control for the missile, disarms it, reroutes it to harmlessly plunge into the Hudson River. The control room at Camp Hutton explode in celebration and breath-catching as, on one of the televisions, Senator Underwood appears, regarding a Supreme Court ruling about the president. He explains that Howard had not yet been sworn in by the Senate, and as such, his place in the line of succession is erroneous, meaning that the Senate Emergency Committee is declaring a suspension of powers and a special election to declare a legitimate president. And in Sacramento, 2 men of the West Coast nation watch the scene unfold as they discuss closing their borders from the deluge of refugees from nearby southwestern states. They begin to argue but are interrupted by Merez, who explains that all they need are weaponized drones controlled by a central AI system. He then goes on to explain that the system was developed by Hank Pym before his death, called WASPs. Hey, remember that map of the US? Yeah, that one, that SHIELD situation map. Well, it's gotten far worse in the intervening days since the Ultimates invasion of Texas and the spreading of the Sentinel/anti-mutant forces, because we now jump into the X-Men part of it. In media res, as at a once quiet rest stop diner in Wyoming, a shot rings out after anti-mutant militiamen rolled up on the place. Kitty races across the parking lot as one of the men tries to stop her. She phases through, heads inside where she finds Jimmy Hudson dead on the floor, surrounded by militia. The ringleader looks to her and smiles and confirms his theory that muties always huddle together like rats, and asks what kind of mutant she is. Then Jimmy springs back to life and drives his claws into the man's shin and rips him to the floor. He leaps up as Rogue and Bobby make their way inside. Iceman freezes one of them and Kitty orders them to take these guys out. Rogue grabs one and makes contact and finds his memories of all the atrocities this young man has committed. And Rogue bashes him into the ground and just pummels his face until Jimmy stops her. He hoists the young maniac up, squeezes his neck until it snaps beneath the weight of his metallic skeleton. Then he tells them that they need to get moving and head out. Then he watches as one of the militia runs off into the night when he sees them walking out and tells the redneck to let the others know what he fucking saw. Then he picks up a dropped handgun and hands it over to Kitty Pryde. The team drives through the night until Jimmy spots something and veers off of the road. Kitty demands to know what the hell he's doing, and Jimmy tells her that they'll get killed if they stay in this car because this is what the militia saw them in, and they let one of them escape. As they stand out in the night, determining what their next course of action should be, Kitty reveals that something happened in New York. She learned not too long ago that there was a raid, and that the tunnels were cleared, and Johnny was taken. Bobby asks if she thinks that he's dead. Kitty doesn't answer, and Jimmy tells them that he smells something not far away. He leads them through the woods as morale slowly suffocates amongst the group, and they come across an abandoned farm. Kitty worries, but Jimmy assures her that they're the only ones around, and they head inside for the night. In the morning, Jimmy hotwires a truck, and they head off once again. The next day, the X-Men arrive in an abandoned town 5 miles from Sentinel-controlled territory. The place is utterly desolate, ruined, and graffiti-lined. Bobby tells them another patrol is coming, and everyone takes cover as Nimrods soar overhead. Kitty hides behind a car, where she stumbles upon a teenage girl who reveals to her that this happens every 27 minutes. She introduces herself as Paige. And once the Sentinels are gone, Kitty helps her out and notices she's wearing orange prisoner fatigues. Paige, aka Husk, tells them about a nearby safe house that houses probably a dozen mutants, but most of them live out in an old abandoned military bunker where there are hundreds of people inside. Later, as the sun sets, the team finally arrive at the old military complex. Paige takes them into the vestibule as the large door unlocks. And Kitty recognizes the voice that greets them as that of Nick Fury's. Kitty greets General Fury and tells him that she and the others are here to get to work. Fury immediately grabs her rifle and tells them all to make sure that they're maintaining their weapons because he has an eye for issues like that. Then he congratulates them all for finally stepping up and reveals that he's been out here for months. Kitty asks why they haven't done anything yet, but Fury tells her that they tried, and all the firepower he got from S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't mean jack or shit against those Sentinels up top. He says that now that they're here, he'll put all of his resources to their disposal. He'll be the best goddamn cheerleader that Commander Kitty Pryde ever has. Kitty looks up at him in shock, and Fury reminds her that he's Nick Fury. He knows what she's been up to on the East Coast. He is fully aware that she can handle herself and lead others. Weeks pass. Colorado River, late one night along the Arizona-California border, a group of refugees try to cross when a wasp swarm appears, ordering them to return to their country of origin. When they try to plead with the machines, they are all gunned down and found dead along the bank the next morning. CNN reports the current death toll along the Arizona-California border at over 100 confirmed victims since the implementation of the weaponized WASP drone fleet. The anchor then shifts to the first ever presidential recall election as polls open once again across the country. After several weeks of campaigning, most voters remain splintered. Over 20 militia groups have since formed within the Great Lakes Alliance territory, with a former Detroit police officer turning the entire city into an armed encampment, taking the name Dictator of Detroit. North and South Carolina militias continue waging war over state borders, and in the West Coast nation, a growing humanitarian crisis as thousands of refugees flee the bloody chaos of the Southwest only to be detained within camps just inside of the Californian border continue, with many reports of rioting taking place. Captain America listens to all of this as he speaks with President Howard. Howard tells him that their resources are dangerously thin, and that the military can barely hold the country together. Cap is ordered to remain in Dallas to oversee the reunification of Texas and is not to cross into disputed territory. Steve tells President Howard that the people in those camps are Americans and they're being butchered, and he needs to do something about it. Howard sweatily shouts at Captain America to stay out of California. This is an internal problem for the West Coast nation to handle, and they have more important issues within the actual Union. Steve tells him, with all due respect, that the president's oath of office doesn't stop at the Mississippi River. Then he walks away as Howard screams after him. The next day, along the New Mexico-Texas border, Captain America meets with Nick Fury. Steve tells Fury it's good to see him alive, and Fury compliments the uniform. Fury also notes that the last time they spoke, they were actually just a few hundred clicks away from this exact spot. And Steve tells him that it feels like a lifetime ago, and asks how the hell mass murder, extinction camps, armed fascist militias are happening on U.S. soil. Fury tells him that the situation in the Southwest went far beyond Cap the moment the former president abandoned it. It's wholly unconventional. Then he reveals that he's actually enlisted a young mutant leader to conduct insurgency within the territory and assures Cap that he can handle the Southwest. Steve shouts that it's hell everywhere else. People are scared and afraid that the United States cannot and will not protect them, and that he has to just sit here on his ass? Fury tells him he's just doing what a good soldier does and is following orders. But Steve bites back that he's more than just a soldier. and people need protection. Fury eggs him on by saying that he's pretty sure Captain America's whole job is obeying the commander-in-chief. Steve shouts that he doesn't even know what this is all about. The lives of American people or a gutless president too worried about losing his job. Then he brings up the last time that they spoke, when Fury asked him to commit treason, and Steve ponders that maybe if he had taken Fury up on his plan, America wouldn't be falling apart. Fury simply leans against his Jeep, smirks, and tells Steve that he's the one who said that, and Steve stops and silently stares out to the west. Later that day, polls officially begin opening, and news anchors cover it when CNN's anchor is interrupted about a situation at a refugee camp in Blythe, California. Their correspondent erupts onto the screen, reporting the madness after a refugee riot broke out within an internment camp and into the nearby town, and the absolute massacre that is currently taking place after a wasp swarm was deployed. In a situation room in Sacramento, reports come in that there's been a malfunction and the wasps are unresponsive and fully autonomous. One of the Silicon Valley leaders panics and demands that Morez do something, and he simply laughs and notes that they wanted them to stay out of their brand new country after all. The younger man shouts that they wanted to bring people together through technology. He never wanted to slaughter. Morez simply smiles, tells them that his job here is done, and fades from existence. In Blythe, a young woman and her child flee desperately from the wasps when the shield of Captain America erupts into the air and recoils back to Cap's hand. The correspondents get footage and report that Captain America has officially arrived in West Coast territory. President Howard flips out in his situation room and demands Carol tell him why Steve is there. She reveals that Captain America resigned from his position as Captain America about 15 minutes ago and told her that he'll send the shield back in the mail tomorrow. Cap, along with Black Widow and Hawkeye, make their way through the streets, securing civilians to safety and ridding the sky of wasps as Iron Man gets in position and prepares to trace the command signal. Steve races through a large warehouse as a massive swarm of wasps follow. He orders Tony to hit it, and Iron Man blasts a massive bolt of energy into the building, destroying the majority of the drones. And later, people are interviewed outside of polling stations, with the overwhelming majority telling reporters that they voted for Captain America. And elsewhere, at Battle Lake in Wyoming, Morez meets with some localized agents of Hydra. Morez tells them that he can help march their secret army straight down the Rocky Mountains and split the country in two. The leader tells him that Hydra isn't as strong as it used to be, and Morez tells him that he can find a secret little ingredient that'll make him invincible. And it's called Project Pegasus. Wow, look at that. Another appearance of Project Pegasus, where the facility is no doubt going to be completely destroyed and ransacked. Do they just put this place on a map that anybody can see? Oh god, poor Wendell Vaughn is going to have to deal with this again. In the following days, the news reports the continued fighting by Captain America and the Ultimates in the West Coast Nation, and that Steve Rogers has become a substantial write-in candidate for the recall election. As Cap leads the Ultimates in a battle, Thor hangs out outside of a Walmart in Citrus Heights, where he found the control room for the Wasps. Thor radios in that Tony's trackers worked, and he orders the men inside out, as he discovers a massive rune burnt into the roof. Then he strikes down Mjolnir and destroys every Wasp drone. Following the battle, a little girl runs up to Captain America and he puts his helmet on her head. She smiles as a payphone begins ringing. Cap suspiciously walks over, answers, and here's Carol Danvers. She tells him that while the count is still going, it looks quite clear. And she congratulates Steve Rogers on becoming the next President of the United States. Elsewhere in Sentinel territory, Paige and Kitty Pryde overlook an internment camp that Paige escaped from. She estimates that there are about 50 or 60 mutants that were in there when she got out. They hide as a Sentinel patrol flies overhead, and Paige's mutant powers are revealed. After she's done shedding, the two head closer and witness a convoy containing bagged mutant prisoners being brought into the camp. Paige reveals that Stryker is in charge of all of this. Kitty tells her that she killed William Stryker Jr. Paige scoffs and tells her to make sure to kill him for good this time. And later at the bunker, the X-Men hang out and discuss the other bunkers that Fury knows of that also harbor mutants and humans alike. Jimmy notes that they don't have an army because everyone down here's too beaten to do anything. Fury agrees, but argues that every single person does have fight in them. Some may be deeper than others, but it's gonna be there. You just gotta bring it out. Then he looks at Kitty and waits for her to act. She grabs a radio connected to the intercom system and gives a rousing speech about who she is, what she's done, and tells anyone listening that they are not lost. They are special. They are powerful. They are more than they think they are. And she expects every one of them to be waiting for her when she gets back from killing the Sentinels and William Stryker Jr. Then she and Fury head out. Later that night, Fury and Kitty wait out when two Nimrods soar overhead. They manage to destroy the machines and bring the parts back down to the bunker. She gives yet another invigorating speech to everyone who's present. One of the mutants, a kid named Black Box, asks to touch it because he is a technopath and he can figure out how it works and hack into their systems. And out in the desert, a Sentinel stands as a Sentinel, and its transceiver picks up the scrambled far-off voice of the girl who killed him. A few days later, back in New York, Genki tells his friend that he has the perfect idea for Miles to become the most popular superhero in the world. A catchphrase! Although Genki has nothing in mind. He only came up with that first step. His suggestion is that every time Miles punches a bad guy, he yell out a random word and see if people like it or not. So then, people will be like, oh my god, what word is Spider-Man gonna say next? Miles is not too sure about the idea, and tells Genki that they should just get back to studying. And Genki demands to see them, and then Miles tells him to lock the door, and he unveils Peter Parker's original web shooters. And Genki finds the original web fluid formula and is in fanboy heaven. The next day, Miles walks home from school and finds police vehicles parked outside of his building. He rushes in and finds a cop outside the open door to his apartment. Ushers Miles inside, where he finds Detective Maria Hill with his parents. They tell their son that the police are here about Uncle Aaron. Miles nervously sits down, hugging his backpack. Maria introduces herself and asks if he was close with his uncle at all. Miles explains their relationship with his uncle and his dad's disapproval. He then asks if they found out who killed Aaron, and Jeff adds that it was Spider-Man. But Maria Hill notes that this isn't necessarily true. They have no concrete evidence. Also, Aaron Davis was a dangerous criminal who stole technology he didn't know how to use. And according to the coroner's reports, the technology in his suit was damaged and backfired. That's what killed him. They discuss this, and then Hill brings up that something happened in Davis's life to make him suddenly believe he could take over as the new Kingpin of New York. She then reveals that she is ex-SHIELD, and in her experience, nothing is adding up. First, Spider-Man and Prowler team up to fight the mob. Then they're fighting against each other openly in the streets, and the next thing you know, Davis dies. And Miles is one of the few civilians who last saw Aaron Davis. And she wants to know if Miles maybe overheard anything or saw anything that could help them, any suspicious goings-ons, possibly. And Miles' mind flashes back to Aaron's charred corpse. He tells her that he doesn't know anything. Maria Hill stands up, apologizes for the intrusion, thanks them for helping, and heads off. Later, Miles returns to Visions and tells Genki everything. Then the intercom calls all students and classes to report to the auditorium for an important announcement. Later, once everyone is assembled, the headmistress begins that the country is currently struggling and that the city government has declared that holding classes is no longer in their best interest. So, as of noon today, the school is officially closing until it is declared safe to reopen. Later in their dorm, Miles and Genki pack up as Miles tells his friend that this is actually great because now he doesn't have to worry about school and stuff and can pretty much just be Spider-Man all the time. Genki tells him he should start helping with the Ultimates. Since his parents work so much, he doesn't, and they won't notice that he's out doing stuff as a superhero. And Miles starts thinking about it. So that night, rain hits hard against the city, and Miles heads out as Spider-Man and towards the bay, where he spots the new Triskelion. Coincidentally, some SHIELD Ospreys soar overhead, so he latches on and accidentally slams right into one of the windows of the building. He lands and right in front of Captain America. Spidey tells Cap that he's reporting for duty and wants to join up with the Ultimates to help. Elsewhere, Jeff Davis is stuck in a SHIELD blockade at his street and demands that they let him through because he lives there. So in anger, he marches past and is arrested and detained. Meanwhile, Captain America chastises Miles for doing all of this, noting that he realizes that his heart is in the right place, but this is not the time nor the place to swing around the city of one of the most secured and advanced military installations in the world. Captain America tells him that Miles thinking that he could just waltz right in and just do this proves his point that he's too young. He then orders Miles to leave when a SHIELD agent notices a Quinn carrier getting pretty close. And then it crashes into the fucking Triskelion. Spidey catches Cap from falling off the roof, and he is barely able to hold on when Gorgon of Hydra appears above him. This Frank Horrigan ripoff starts attacking and aims his rifle. Miles goes invisible and Cap smashes into the Triskelion and orders the agents to get a battalion of Hulkbusters to the roof immediately. Spider-Man, meanwhile, tries to fight Gorgon and the Hydra soldiers, and eventually Cap and the newly designed Hulkbusters arrive back up top with more S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Massive assault breaks on the upper levels of the Triskelion, and Miles' web swings around the circumference of the building as Cap goes head-to-head with Gorgon, and Spidey slams into him. Cap and Spidey go back to back as Captain America explains the situation of Hydra. Captain America then takes down the Hydra commandeered Quinn carriers, and it crashes into the bay. Sometime later, the rooftop is resecured and the Ultimates and Spider-Woman arrive. Spidey tells Cap how amazing he was, and that whole fight was incredible. And Cap looks down at him and tells Miles that he takes back everything he said. Miles Morales proved himself today, and truly has changed Steve's mind not only about his abilities, but his character, and why he wants to be a superhero. Jessica asks what is happening, and Steve tells them that he is officially inviting Spider-Man to join the Ultimates. Later in the lobby, news arrives, and the Ultimates are interviewed as Miles calls his mom, telling her that he's at Genki's, but she panics that she can't get back into the city because of the lockdowns, and Jeff isn't answering his phone, and tells Miles that the military told her that they're at war. Then she gets a call and tells Miles that she'll call him right back. Tony walks over and invites Miles to the Triskelion promenade outside, where Captain America is set to begin giving his speech as the newly elected President of the United States of America.
It is an honor to have been elected. I'm not a politician, and I understand if some of you are apprehensive. America is deep in crisis. Her people are divided, mistrustful, nervous, and scared. But America has asked me to lead, and I ask for my fellow Americans to look within themselves. My grandmother always said, "Ask not for challenges equal to our strength, but strength equal to our challenges." And to the children who might be watching, I know what it is like to grow up in desperate times. I was taught that everyone must do their best, that we must do everything we can to take care of each other. No exceptions. We all must live up to our potential. I look at America right now, broken in pieces, and I remember that I once risked everything to answer a call. And I realize now I can do more to serve my country. I know I can do more to live up to my potential. This crisis calls us all to do our best, to rebuild our fragile unity, to find the strength equal to our challenges. And I have decided to answer the call of the people. I accept. I, Steve Rogers, Captain America, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States of America, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
The media goes into an uproar, calling him President Cap, asking what his first act will be, who his vice president is. But Steve has to run, although he does note one thing. America is his White House. Back at Camp Hutton, Danvers and the remaining operatives freak out because Stark modified the jet to be untraceable. Then they receive an encrypted transmission from Steve, who grants Carol complete authority to act on his behalf when he's in the field, and that she's staying on as Chief of Staff. She tells him that's not what Chief of Staff does, and that his presidency is tenuous, especially with Senator Underwood in the Emergency Committee in DC. Then she tells him there is just too much. The West Coast is still in a standoff. Detroit's inner city war is raging out of control and destroying the area. The Carolinas are still tearing themselves apart. And to make matters worse, Wyoming is now off the grid entirely. And here's the biggest shocker. They've lost contact with Project Pegasus. And not long after, Steve slams his fist into a militiaman between North and South Carolina and tells her that he needs to call her back. And Tony takes control of his reworked Wasps and drives a wedge between the forces, noting that if Steve is looking for a vice president, he did go to an Ivy League. Thor, meanwhile, destroys General Paul R. Yount's expressway to cut off the supply line, as Cap orders them to deliver the generals of the North and the South so that they can end this stupid little war. And not long after, news crews film on-site footage of the Ultimates forcing a peaceful end to the Carolina Wars and the reinstatement of both states into the Union. Steve Rogers reminds them that if they ever forget that they work for the Union, that he'll come right back down here to remind them. Later, Steve notes that he needs to check in with Hawkeye and Black Widow and asks for Tony to head to Silicon Valley and bring back the West Coast to the Union, while Thor is to head to Wyoming and figure out what is happening. And Thor finally reveals his concerns to the others, noting that he has seen this all before, and that it's to do with an Asgardian. Cap tells Thor that they can handle this after the situation in Wyoming is dealt with, and then he pilots his jet away. Later, he speaks with Senator Underwood, who tells Steve that he has no authority to negotiate peace without approval of the committee. Steve tells him that his job is to restore the Union, and asks if Underwood is about to stand in his way. Underwood invites him to head to Washington so that they can figure out a strategy, because these things take time. You can't just barge bullheadedly into things. He's not Teddy Roosevelt. But Steve tells him that that's not how the real world works, and then hangs up as he dodges anti-air bombardments and soars into downtown Detroit, which has been under siege by S.H.I.E.L.D. for 16 days. S.H.I.E.L.D. ceases bombardment as Cap lands within the primary base camp. He then marches inside, orders them all to stand down and drop their weapons, and asks the nearby soldiers to get his plane refilled and ready within 25 minutes, because it's not going to take that long for him to solve this mess. And it does not. Massive crowds of people cheer him on, waving American flags as Captain America walks through the city with David Seeger, the dictator of Detroit, in custody. And Underwood watches and speaks with Mraz over the phone and tells his benefactor that they're going to have to try something less subtle. Meanwhile, Thor heads to Project Pegasus, where he discovers legions of Hydra have overtaken the base. Then he is struck by Asgardian magic and radios in that he needs to head inside and stop this. But Cap orders him to hold back and just wait. But Thor ignores it, and he orders S.H.I.E.L.D. to scramble all available forces to Wyoming immediately as he flies in. But Director Flum tells him only the Senate committee can authorize that. And Cap tells him to forget the Senate committee and follow his lead. Then communications end and Flum orders the deck cleared. He contacts Underwood about Captain America's plan. Underwood reminds him how powerful they'll be if Wyoming goes how they want it to go, and tells Flum that it's about time to find another president. Flum orders the ballistic system to acquire Steve's jet and opens fire. Then delete all records of the order. Then Black Widow grows with Pym particles and socks him in the jaw and places him under arrest for attempted assassination and treason. They fight through the Triskelion command deck, and Cap flies his jet into the building and leaps out. And Cap kicks his ass as he tells him that it was a simulated radar that Tony Stark generated, and calls Flum an idiot, pretty much. Steve kicks him across the room for stealing S.H.I.E.L.D. out of Nick Fury's hands, for conspiring against America and letting the country fall apart, and for attempting to kill President Steve Rogers. In Senator Underwood's office, he receives a video call from President Rogers, and he and Monica stand with Flum. And Steve tells him that they have enough evidence for each of them to end on high treason. and explains how things are going to work from now on. Monica Chang is officially the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., America is invading Wyoming ASAP, and the Senate Emergency Powers Committee is disbanded effective immediately. Underwood screams that he'll have Rogers impeached by this morning. He's not FDR, he's a clown in a flag. And then Hawkeye bonks him on the head with an arrow and introduces himself as a special envoy to the president. And meanwhile, across the country, Mr. Mraz mobilizes Hydra forces. In the Southwest, however, things are playing out within the shadows. Black Box has completely deconstructed the Nimrod head and tries to deduce how its brain functions. Then he spots something he overlooked, ironically, a little black box, and realizes that it has been transmitting data this whole time. Meanwhile, Jimmy Hudson leads Blue Team towards Camp 14, and he halts everyone, because there's a low rumble of Humvees getting close. One of the members, a mutant named Shola, heads out and just fucking wrecks them all. 15 minutes later, Blue Team has captured the anti-mutant forces, and Jimmy radios in to Fury that they have a batch of prisoners after they attack the convoy. Fury tells him to save the vehicles next time because they actually need those, and to ready for extraction, and to take care of the soldiers because they aren't set up for POWs. Jimmy notes that Camp 14 is no doubt aware after all the noise and plumes of smoke, and at Camp 14, Bobby and Paige, aka Husk, sneak into camp as Fury radios in and tells them about Blue Team and the base's soon to mobilize security. 2 Nimrods fly overhead and Bobby radios it in as they elect to continue instead. Husk breaks their way into one of the buildings and she turns metal and automated turrets open fire on them. They make quick work and then find a woman cowering in the corner. Ultimate armor! Guards arrive and she turns into a dinosaur construct and just fucking kills them, causing some sort of dead man switch to emit a signal. Bobby welcomes Hisako Ishiki to the Mutant Liberation Front. By nightfall, the base is under control of the MLF, which is a neat reworking of the MLF from the mainstream universe, which, as far as my knowledge goes, which was just the 90s Liefeld stuff, did nothing. Later that night, Fury speaks with Kitty about what it takes and what it means to be at war like this. She tells him that they took the camp well enough, but he's not talking about that kind of war. He tells her that she'll be fighting this war her whole life, just like he has. Black Box finally finds her and tells her what he's discovered about the signal that the box has been emitting. He wrote a script to convert it to English and played it and discovered it's gotten everything. Days of recordings, all being sent to some central command. And Fury radios into all points to take defensive positions immediately, and he chucks the box out into the desert and wonders why they haven't been attacked yet. Then he realizes he shouldn't have opened his big mouth, as legions of Nimrod sentinels rain down from the night sky. Kitty Pryde orders the telekinetics to open fire, then the flyers are unleashed into the air and begin tearing open the subdued Nimrods. Fury tells her not to get cocky, because those are still unarmored, mostly untrained forces up there. And as if on command, one of them is vaporized, and Fury orders the flyers out of the sky immediately as Nimrods begin assaulting the camp. Fury radios into a secret weapon not too far away named Storm. She tells him to get everyone to cover and unleashes a barrage of lightning. Sometime later, as the sun begins rising over the southwest, the MLF overlook the ruined Nimrods as Kitty asks how Fury got used to this. He tells her that you don't. Fury compliments her abilities and says that she doesn't need him anymore. A mutant needs to lead, and she is the one for the job, because he has duties he needs to take care of elsewhere. She asks him if he thinks the new government is going to be pro-mutant or not, and Fury remains silent, just lingering there, until he tells her that he truly doesn't know. He believes in Steve Rogers to truly be an ally of mutants and man, but he has to pull this country together, and mutants don't exactly pull too highly right now. But Fury's gonna have her back from here on out, no matter what a bunch of politicians in ill-fitting suits have to say. And then he gives her one final order before relinquishing himself: to shake his hand on a job well done. And then he tells her that Captain America is going to be visiting pretty soon. Unbeknownst to them, however, a legion of Nimrods are led across the desert by William Stryker Jr.'s consciousness. Hours later, as the MLF work to dismantle the camp, they hear it. And everyone stops and watches as Nimrods soar over the mountains. The alarm is sounded as Sentinels and Stryker assault the base. Kitty comes face to robot face with William Stryker Jr. He launches a fucking rocket out of its massive hand, and Kitty simply phases through the explosion and walks towards it. She gets Warpath to launch her into the air and climbs atop the Stryker Sentinel, demanding to know why the hell he won't die. Stryker tells her his vision is of a world without mutants, and it is inevitable. Kitty unloads into his faceplate with adamantium-tipped jackets with incendiary cores and fucking demolishes the head of the Stryker Sentinel. And many hours later, Captain America arrives within a relatively safe zone along the border of the Southwest. News agents follow him into a building where he and Kitty Pryde, mutant leader, shake hands for the cameras and head into a room. Steve thanks her for meeting with him and tells her he won't waste her time. He proposes two things to the mutant community: a choice and a home. She asks what the choice is, and Cap asks if she is aware of the Seer virus, a genetic creation that S.H.I.E.L.D. scientists replicated, which can remove the mutant gene. He's offering it to her and her people. She panics, but Steve tells her he's offering it as a choice to take, not as some kind of eugenic scheme or something. Because after all of the unspeakable persecution and loss, he thought there may be some mutants who want a new life where that won't happen again. And he reminds her again that it is just an offer and no one will be compelled or forced to take it. Then he reveals that he has also secured federal land for the mutant population, which is to be given freely as a gift to any who decline the Seer virus. And as much as it turns his stomach to believe, there are those who will never accept an integrated mutant population. But in time, he believes that it will change. And she asks if that's everything. And Steve tells her that he wishes her the best for she and her people. And Kitty exits the room and heads out. The next day at Project Pegasus, Merez walks with the head of Hydra as they discuss their plans and the resignation and arrest of Senator Underwood and Director Flum. Merez tells him that what they have ready now will have to be enough because he has obtained his birthright, and it will make them unstoppable. Then he orders the Hydra head to leave. Then he walks around the room calling out to Thor, asking him to come out and speak. Family to family. He proposes he could solve all of Thor's problems, in fact. And Thor erupts and demands that Loki stand down or else Thor is gonna kill him all over again. Merez laughs at the insinuation and erupts in Asgardian magic as he reveals that he is Thor's son, Modi. He orders his father to bow before him, and Thor breaks down over the sight of his own son, the son that he had with Hela during Ultimatum to ensure that Steve Rogers and Valkyrie returned safely to Earth, the same son that he was forced to abandon and trap away within the roots of the World Tree when the Children of Tomorrow attacked and destroyed New Asgard. Modi screams at his father for doing that to him, and for the thousands of years that he wound up trapped inside the room without doors. And when he was there, it revealed many truths to him. Truths of the past, of the future, of the fate of the gods, of the true heart of mankind. Modi witnessed the destructions of Asgard, old and new, all committed by the hands of man. Modi sternly tells his father that his inheritance, his heritage, his legacy was stolen from him, and the kingdom of Asgard was stolen from him. And he demands a kingdom, and he has found the fuel to build a new empire, and it demands the death of America. Thor tells his son that he has been corrupted by the World Tree, demands he end his pathetic game now before Thor ends it for him. Modi does not relent, and Thor breaks down and falls to his knees and sees what has happened to his son as his power overtakes his father, and reluctantly tells Modi that he will obey. One day later, Thor quietly follows Modi and the Hydra head as they advance through Wyoming, and Modi reveals to the head that S.H.I.E.L.D. has infiltrated his soldiers, and Cassie Lang calls on the attack. She and the giant women reserves erupt. Hawkeye leads forces out of an ambush point as Director Chang orders Falcon to get airborne and find the source of the strange energy signature that they're tracking. As the helicarrier decloaks above them, Tony tells her that whatever the signature is, it's close and unlike anything they've seen before, and wonders if it might be magical. and that it works on brainwaves, meaning that if this Hydra platoon makes it to a major city, whatever it is will no doubt influence every resident into joining Hydra. It's the ultimate brainwashing tool, whatever it is that they're looking for. Monica tells them that this is the last line of defense and they cannot let Hydra continue. War Machine brigades soar in and assault the shield forces. Falcon is unable to get into the sky as Captain America demands to go down, but Monica refuses because he's the president and his security is her top priority. Hawkeye radios in that Hydra are pulling back due to the War Machine barrage and shield forces are pinned down and getting picked off. And not long after, Captain America rides into the battlefield, American flag trailing behind him, soaring overhead like the veritable eagle of freedom itself, and the shield forces are roused into fighting once again. Modi laughs and orders Cap to be shot down, and Cap's sky cycle explodes and he plummets to the earth. Iron Man and the Wasps move in. Anthony sends the Wasps on search and rescue for Cap, and Iron Man demolishes the War Machine brigade. Meanwhile, just behind enemy lines, Captain America picks himself up as Modi stands with Thor and Hydra. Modi tells him that he's ready to negotiate America's terms for surrender, but then he has a different plan. The lifeless body of Steve Rogers, tied to the hood of a truck, broadcast across America. And Steve recognizes the staff in Modi's hand, specifically the gem. The Mind Gem! Modi ridicules the mortals for never having been able to figure out how to use its power, noting that it called to him for millennia whilst he was trapped within Yggdrasil, the World Tree, and it's revealed that the Mind Gem comes from Asgard itself, and Modi laughs that although it is ancient, it still radiates with absolute power, enough to break his father, enough power to break all of humanity. And then he uses it on Stature, and she picks up one of the dirty, hairy cannons and fires it directly into a helicarrier. Director Chang orders immediate evacuation as the helicarrier lurches out of the sky. Steve Rogers stands up, faces Modi, and tells him that his people will never give up against monsters like him. Modi smiles and says he forgot that Steve was even here, and orders his father to kill him. And Thor strikes down against Captain America. Flashback time! 4 hours ago, Hawkeye gives a rousing rundown of what's going to happen today, and what needs to happen today. The plan is to ambush the massive Hydra convoy before they reach Casper, Wyoming, and can recruit more people into their units. Powered fighters are on the front line. Falcon is tasked with getting airborne and finding the signal origin that they're tracking once the forces are distracted. Sue Storm needs to make sure that Hydra are knocked off their game with invisible force fields and all the stuff that she can do. Spiders, Woman, and Man are instructed to stick together, and Clint doesn't want to hear jack shit from Jessica Drew about that order, because that came from the president. Then he's alerted that they're in position, and he orders everyone to get ready for dispatch, because whether they like it or not, this is going to be something that's written down in the history books. And back in New York, Jefferson Davis and 2 others ride in the back of a SHIELD prisoner transport. Jeff slams against the wall and shouts that he's an American citizen and he doesn't deserve to be detained like this. 2 others tell him that they're in the same situation, but you don't hear them losing their minds. There's not much they can do. And then the truck is launched over itself as it's assaulted by a Hydra ambush in the streets. Jeff and the 2 others lie in agony, and a minute later, after screaming and gunfire, the doors open and Hydra release them. Jeff and the others find Hydra agents standing with 2 SHIELD drivers, zip-tied and on their knees. The leader of the group asks if they would like to join Hydra, because they're taking the country back from SHIELD and the elite who have stolen control of it. And Jeff considers it when one of the Hydra agents executes the 2 drivers. Back in Wyoming, Miles catches his breath in the midst of battle. Spider-Woman whips past and snags him, demanding that he get as far away as possible. Miles, however, tells her that he can do this. Captain America believes he can do this. Then a nearby truck explodes as the War Machine Brigade soars overhead. Spidey thwaps one of them and latches on for a ride, and he causes the War Machines to pretty much kill each other. And yeah, I was wondering that whole time if those are, in fact, soldiers inside who are manning just suits of armor. And that is the case. Those are just people. They're not drones. They're just idiots. Anyway, Anyway, Spidey is now plummeting to the ground, but is able to web onto a helicopter and cascades himself back into the battlefield as Spider-Woman chastises him for coming back. They take cover behind a Jeep, and Miles demands to know why Jessica hates him. She tells him that if she hated him, she'd just toss him on a grenade. Spider-Man and Woman watch as Captain America soars overhead, and Spidey webs onto a war machine that's trying to kill Cap and wrenches him to the ground, accidentally crashing into Stature, launching them far away and into some random farmland where they just crash. Miles is launched through the field, and it is here that he will lie for several hours. Hey, the map sure has changed, huh? Steve Rogers reads his prepared speech to the American public on what happened in Wyoming. How America failed to stop the Hydra army, and they continue driving through the Rocky Mountains, dividing America entirely, and that he takes all responsibility. Tony and Thor listen intently, and then Tony laughs that it's a good thing he didn't end up having to read that speech, am I right? Then Carol asks if they're ready for the victory parade, and not long after, the hundreds of heroes move through New York City to raucous applause and celebration after Hydra's forces were driven underground. A new government-authorized faction dubbed Captain's Guard is established, with people turning out in droves to enlist. But martial law has extended into its third year as President Captain America continues to hunt down Hydra insurgents. And after that, Steve sits in his office, pondering on what to do and what has happened to lead to this point. And Peter Parker asks him if he's okay. Steve looks up and realizes what's happening and tells him that this isn't what Peter Parker died for. And he breaks out of his trance in the Wyoming battlefield as Thor hoists him aloft, and Modi laughs at the spectacle. Modi tells him he was that close to breaking Steve's will, but he'll get there, just like he did with his father. And then he will rebuild Asgard upon the corpse of America. Steve smirks and tells Modi that he doesn't know him very well, because he will never stop fighting. Meanwhile, the helicarrier continues falling as the ship is evacuated. Monica gets in contact with Hawkeye and tells him that he's the new commander general of ground operations and that he seriously needs to stop Hydra from reaching Casper. Second goal is locating Cap. Hawkeye tells her to cut the shit because he's not listening and demands that she evacuate the ship and lead them to victory. She tells him that she has to bring the helicarrier down on the other side of the mountain range because it is powered by parallel vibranium reactors, which, if and when they are to explode, will wipe out everything within a 100-mile radius. Then she cuts off communications. Hawkeye orders Iron Man to provide cover with his wasps, and then he's struck by an explosion. He lands several feet away as a young Hydra woman holds a shotgun to him and demands he order the Ultimates to stand down. He tells her to calm her ass down. Meanwhile, Thor and Cap fight as Thor's consciousness tries to undo the effects of the mind gem. Modi and Thor are distracted, and Cap unleashes his shield into Modi's staff and the gem, rendering it into an explosion. And across the battlefield, the young woman groans in pain and asks where the hell she is. Stature comes to and is informed that she shot down the helicarrier, and she races after it as regular Hydra soldiers continue fighting. Stature grows more and more as she races after the helicarrier, and she catches it midair and crashes to the ground with it in hand. Tony radios to Monica that the energy signature isn't active anymore, and a lot of the Hydra recruits have seemingly lost their resolve to fight. She takes off in a sky cycle and orders all forces to converge on Hawkeye's position and wipe out remaining enemy forces that are still attacking. Meanwhile, Modi picks himself up from the blast, desperately looking for the mind gem, and Thor looks down upon him and tells his son that this is over. Modi screams that he has no idea what his existence is like. Thor failed him as a father, failed to protect him, failed in every way imaginable. And Thor screams as lightning cracks that his son is corrupted and a shame to his grandfather. And Thor strikes him down. Cap shields himself, and by the time the blast is gone, he sees Thor cradling the ruined and charred corpse of his son. The Hydra head orders his troops to keep fighting, and the young woman aims her gun at the head, and he whips up his submachine gun and orders that she fight with the others, or else. But then the boots of Captain America crunch through the dirt, and he orders her to stand down and comes face to face with the Hydra head, and orders him to take the shot, and grabs the barrel of the gun and plants it firmly against his chest. He tells the head there are millions of people who would rather be united than divided, and they will fight for that. The American people are strong and won't buy his brand of poison. The Hydra head panics and Steve clocks him in his weak, fascistic jaw as the other heroes round up and overlook the surrendering army. Sometime later, Miles Morales aimlessly walks through Wyoming fields in the general direction that he thinks the Ultimates and S.H.I.E.L.D. were, and then he spots something in the distance. A Jeep driving towards him, kicking up dust, and it finally pulls up, and Jessica Drew leaps out and races to Miles and hugs him and asks if he's okay, because it has been hours since she last saw him. Then she radios into Cap and tells him that they found Spider-Man, and she tells him that she was wrong about Miles. Back in NYC, Rio finally gets into the city, and the blockade on her street is lifted and cleared, and she walks past, where she finds Jeff sitting in their living room with a rifle on his lap. She freaks out, asking what happened, and where he got that gun, and begins crying. He places the rifle on the coffee table and breaks down over what he did, about the Hydra soldiers killing the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, offering him the rifle, offering him to join Hydra. He took the rifle, and then he gunned the Hydra soldiers down in the streets. Then he realized people saw, and he ran home. He didn't even realize he was still carrying the gun when he snuck back into the house. He panics that he ruined their whole lives. She tells him that it'll be okay. It was in self-defense against actual terrorists, and that they'll figure it out. They just need to find Miles. Miles, meanwhile, is driven through the city in the back of an unmarked S.H.I.E.L.D. van with Jessica. He tells her his parents will suspect something when he shows up in ill-fitting clothes that aren't his, one of which is S.H.I.E.L.D. branded. He tells her he can't just waltz into the house after being gone for like 2 days, but she tells him that no one is inside and shows a scan to prove it. She tells him to tell his parents that he was at the Borough Park Library because S.H.I.E.L.D. was congregating refugees there during the attack. They just released everyone, and that's why he has the clothes and was gone. All he needs to do is keep the story short and simple. That's how you make a perfect lie. Then he asks what she knows about him and that he doesn't, and like why she seemingly cares so much about him all of a sudden. She simply tells him that she wants him to learn from this, and they can all learn from their mistakes, and that she'll tell him when she's ready. Then they drop him off and head out, which is such a missed opportunity. You know, every time Jessica Drew in the Ultimate Universe comes up, I always talk about how much of a missed opportunity that character was. You didn't need to bring fucking Peter Parker back to have him interact with Miles Morales. You had Jessica Drew there. You could just say, oh, she still had some memories, blah, 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 of being Peter Parker at this time when Miles was active. And I enjoyed their relationship more than the shitty bringing back resurrection of Peter Parker. And I feel like if you had continued this storyline with Jessica instead of the stupid shit bringing Peter back, it would have worked far better. Anyway, Rio and Jeff arrive at Genki's house and are invited in. They ask if he knows where Miles is, and Genki begins panicking when Miles arrives in the doorway. He recites the lie that Jessica gave him, and Rio hugs her son as he and Genki give each other the look. Rio tells Miles that they need to get home because his father had quite a day. He fought terrorists, and Miles freaks out over how cool that is. And the next day at the new Triskelion, Danvers and Monica Chang give a presentation on the current situation. Any succession movements have been halted, and while some states are going to be difficult to deal with, the entire country has been united. Unfortunately, there are still a good number of Hydra that escaped into the mountains. Hawkeye asks what happened to the Mind Gem thing, and Tony tells him that they should be celebrating instead of here in this boardroom, because they just fought the second worst civil war that the country has ever seen, and won! Carol tells Cap that the mayor of New York is again asking to throw a victory parade with Cap and all the heroes, and he gets a sickening sense of deja vu, and refuses to let that happen. The people know what they did. They know why they did it. And Tony's right. It's time for proper reconstruction to take place. The end. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts below. My God, what an event. I really do enjoy United We Stand, Divided We Fall. I don't know why in my brain I always want to reverse how it's said. I always want to say United We Fall, Divided We Stand, just because I think that, like, you know, it's the Ultimate Universe, so they're subverting all these expectations, so they fucked up the phrasing or something. But, hey, I told you, post-Ultimatum Ultimate Universe gets out there and actually is entertaining in a non-car crash, rubbernecking sort of way. And I really do, like I said, enjoy this because it is so wholly different in feel from anything else event-wise that we have seen before in the Ultimate Universe. Both the Ultimate Universe and the mainstream Marvel Universe. I think that this is a pretty well-crafted story that actually runs together very well. Like, the tie-ins work. Aside from a few hiccups here and there, but I'll talk about that briefly in a moment, although this might be nostalgia speaking, but I do still prefer the 616 Civil War to this. This one is far more depressing and realistic than that one was, I think. It's fascinating to see Kitty's evolution. Check out my Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Spider-Man videos for more of her, because she really has grown so much since we first met her, and that build-up, that post-Ultimatum climax perfectly leads into where she is now. She began as this plucky young Jewish girl with mutant powers, and grows into the leader of mutant kind in America. Kitty becomes the leader of the mutant reservation that's established in Utah after this. Imagine going back in time to when, like, you know, it was still pre-Ultimatum and all that, and telling people that the one person who carries on the role of Charles Xavier in leading mutants and becomes one of the most thoughtful and well-written and diverse characters of the Ultimate Universe is Kitty Pryde. I suppose it makes sense, you know, she's always been shown to be capable of handling things, Days of Future Past as the primary example I can think of, but Ultimate Kitty Pryde is, well, the ultimate Kitty Pryde. And we also get Captain America's evolution, one that I think does make a lot of sense. It's been years since he's been defrosted in the modern day and brought back to the world, and as such, he has changed. He has evolved as a person. He came into the 21st century with 20th century ideas and thoughts. He was brash and standoffish when he first appeared, that bravado of who he was in World War II in the 40s. And although he is still arguably a good person then, he's become a better person now. His experiences and the people that he's met and what he has seen and what he has done and endured since the Ultimates originally formed has wholly changed him, and it's a great way to explain the how and why of Steve's actions in those first couple of books. You know, the Ultimates 1, 2 volumes, and then 3, and even Ultimates versus X-Men and Ultimate War, because he was still looking at the world from his old viewpoint. I cannot imagine Ultimates 1 era Cap having the same tact to handle the mutant situation, let alone everything else that he goes up against at this point in time. He has grown as a person. He has let his empathy actually show more rather than hide it behind a mask of old school masculinity. He has opened himself up to others and cares for people in ways that he would have never outright done so before. Peter Parker, Kitty, Miles are the biggest reactionary changes I can think of. He was growing, and Peter Parker's death truly was that catalyst for the new Steve. And, you know, we get more Nick Fury stuff, going from pretty anti-mutant to mutant-supporting freedom fighter is a crazy adjustment for the character. Although I would imagine that the internment camps, the lynching, the mass murders of mutants following Ultimatum is what really struck a chord with this black man who was born in the 1920s. Fury's dislike of mutants has always been an interesting aspect and discussion piece from the Ultimate Universe, because he's one of the people that ever knew the truth about them, far before even anyone else did. And I think at least initially, it was more of a classic Ultimate Fury idea, which was to kind of keep around individuals who could, in case, be somehow useful to him. Because he gets along well enough with Xavier in the times that we do see him appear in the Ultimate X-Men books. Although, you know, they did butt bald heads quite a bit. But I don't think Fury ever expected mutant kind to be ruined and attacked in the way it was. You know, there were Sentinels for quite a time. The Sentinels were already an established thing in the first Ultimate X-Men book. But it was never to this point that mutant hatred took over. And there is, like I said, the weirdest hiccup I can find in this story between the issues not really working together is that final Spider-Man issue where for some reason Miles and the others are suddenly in Wisconsin? I guess they just forgot which W starting state the battle was taking place in. Bendis just that was lost upon him. And also Cassie Lang. There's a couple of bits where Cassie Lang is still kind of under the influence of the Mind Gem, and she fights him, even though that also doesn't make any sense because she was still in Wyoming and she catches the helicarrier. And they say it's Stature, so it's not like it's another giant woman that just randomly shows up. It's very confusing and a weirdly unconnected segment in this otherwise pretty well done multi-issue, multi-storyline arc, and that's why I cut it out. And those are my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below of this forgotten Marvel event from the Ultimate Universe. I hope you enjoyed. As always, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Smokey'sVideos, where you get early access to videos when available, all of my commentaries for movies and shows, and all of my comics on there digitally as well. Check out my Etsy shop, blaketwild.etsy.com, for physical copies of my books, Destructo and the Custodians Agents of Cross. Every purchase comes with a free head sketch of any character of your choice, and my podcast, the Comic Stick Podcast, I Need Some Disney, and my gaming channel, Smokey's Save File, where I have a not too often gaming-based podcast called Gamer Milk. Check all those out, really helps me out. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time for more Ultimate Era. Bye.